Hey guys, Stealth here and welcome back to Stormworks. This is going to be the start of a new career series. The old series didn't really get to progress any further simply because I didn't have the required parts and the tech tree got introduced, which really threw a wrench in the works. So I'm starting anew in the Arctic. This is my only base. I've turned off the required fuel, so I have unlimited fuel. And that should allow me to not have to worry about constantly refueling my creations, which, especially in the Arctic, is a little tricky. Now, I don't have that many parts available at the moment. It's just the standards, and with the new research tree, I can unlock additional stuff as I get there. I don't have too much money either, 15,000 points, or $15,000, which should be enough to get me at least going. Now I have a large ship dock, so I can already go for building a large ship or a large creation. But hopefully the emphasis on this particular campaign series is going to be helos, because they're far more flexible and I generally don't show those off. So I'm going to build a boat, and in my case I'm going to go for a diesel electric creation. So I'm going to have a boat which generates power through the diesels, and then transfers that power through generators into batteries, and from batteries into the actual propellers. Speaking of propellers, I'm going to go with a double propeller in the rear. Let's see, how do I usually do this? Now, of course, it is Stormworks, so quite a bit of my time is going to be spent just building units, building ships, building boats, building whatever. And that's the charm of the game, of course. That's what you're here for, probably. Alright, that's going to be the rear. The stern, whatever you want to call it. These things are going to be driven by, I think, 2 electric motors, and then through a gearbox. So I first need to tie them together. It's going to be pointing at the engine. I'm going to need my pipes to make sure that these things are connected. I'm not going to do a whole tutorial on how to build a particular ship. That is not the aim of this series. The aim is just to do missions in the Arctic and see how far we can go. Let's angle this one down and split it. And then add 2 electric motors. Alright, so that's the actual propulsion system. Now I need to make sure that these things have batteries, and that the batteries constantly stay charged due to engines. I'm going to go with 2 engines. Let's see, how do I want to deploy those? Yeah, I suppose this could work. We'll put the generators back here, and the coolant can go out of the bottom of the boat. Coolant out, coolant in. So let's go with a couple of ports. Now, one very real hazard that you have in the Arctic is dying because of the cold. Unfortunately, I don't really have any Arctic gear yet, and it's going to take me quite a while to actually unlock that. So I'm going to have to be quite careful with the amount of health that I have. And try not to die, basically. Try not to die. A couple of fuel tanks. We're just going to be sharing the fuel tanks between those 2 engines. Let's see, you're going to go front. This one's going to go like that. I'm going to have to split them. And then sort of split them again. I know this is probably way too much piping, but at least I'll have all my tanks connected this way. And these things are going to go to the fuel intake. Hold on, let me set the engines mirrored. No. Yep, now I have fuel on this side and exhaust on the other side. That's what I wanted. Okay, now we can connect those. So we're going to go close to the fuel tank. Up. Angle. And connected. Alright, so I have 4 fuel tanks which are being brought to both of my engines. Now I need an air intake and I need an exhaust. I'm going to loop the exhaust through the exterior of the boat. And thanks to the pipe angle I can do that, and the enclosed pipes. Not like that. There we go. Close this part off. Now, I'm not really above spending a lot of money on my first boat. I don't want to spend too much, but my experience so far with the campaign has been that it gives you a lot more money than you know what to do with. Which is quite the luxury problem. But there is a setback, and that is that you're not getting enough research points. Or at least the rate at which you're getting research points is a little disappointing. Alright, we're going to go with a long bow that cuts through the waves. Oh, of course this won't work. And we need a couple of pyramid blocks. There. Now we're going to close this part off. I really hope that this boat can actually make it out of the dock before I freeze over. I'm going to have to unlock heating and Arctic gear as quickly as I can. Especially because in the Arctic you're also going to be doing missions where you need to save people who have just been stranded. And they generally are not in a very good state. More often than not, they're already freezing over. So the sooner I can make sure that they get warmed up by having a heater on my vessel, the better it'll be for everyone. Because nobody likes a popsicle for a person who gets rescued. Okay, so that's the side of the boat set. Let's work on the exhausts in a minute. For now, I still have my air intake to do, and I have my engine outputs to work with, so I can send those to the generators. So we're going to go with the pipes. Pipe goes down. I'm going to work with a splitter here, because I want an electric motor to spin up and help those engines get started. And I'll explain why. I'm going to be adding quite a few gearboxes to these engines. And those are going to then translate into the generators. By doing it in such a fashion, the engine is going to have quite a bit of trouble starting up. So I'm going to need to give it a little bit of help. And that's what that electric motor is there for. To just make sure that this thing spins up. And once it is actually properly spun up, we can then turn off the electric motor. Okay, let's go with more pipes. I think that 6 generators should cut it. Generators are also quite expensive. This is going to set me back quite a bit. There we go, we're down to 8,400. Batteries. Now, batteries are very important in this boat, because they're the ones that are actually going to help me keep going. This gearbox is not set up properly. That needs to be like that, which directly impacts the way that these things are supposed to be set up. One more. And a pipe. There. Now I need my batteries again. Okay. Now it's time to add a microcontroller. The microcontroller is going to take the RPM of the engine. That one, or RPS actually. If the RPS is too low, it's going to send a signal to throttle up this engine. If the RPS is acceptable, then it's going to turn off that engine. Now, the way that I do that is that I need a couple of signals going in and out. Let's first make this thing a little bigger, and I'll decrease it in size as necessary. I'm going to have an input, and this is the sensor that gives me the RPS of the engine. That's going to be the input. The output is going to be telling the electric engine to go on or off. So this is going to go to the electric engine. And those are just the two units that I need. The rest of it's going to be down to logic. So I have my RPS sensor. This thing needs to start verifying that my RPS is in fact too low. So I need a less than. If A, and it says it here, if A is less than B, then you're going to send an output. So if my A output, which is the RPS of the engine, is less than a constant number, which is going to be the desired RPS, let's set that to 3. That's usually when an engine stalls at less than 3 RPS. If that happens, I want you to send an on signal. Unfortunately, I cannot connect this one to that one because it is requiring a number input and not an on-off signal. So we're also going to have to use a switch box. This numerical switch box is going to turn on or off. Again, I'm going to need 2 constant numbers. 1, 2. One's going to go to the on state and one's going to go to the off state. So if my sensor RPS is less than 3, send an on signal. The on signal should then be 1, because I need the electric motor to just work. If it is off, so the second value, if there is nothing, if the numerical switch box is not receiving an on signal, I wanted to send a 0 so that that engine doesn't actually do anything, that electric motor. So this is going to be, let's see, electric starter motor, I suppose you could call it. Electric starter motor. Electric starter motor. There you are. I'm going to have 2 of those, one for each side. This one sends it to the motor. This one, the RPS, then sends it to the starter RPS. So if, the sensor of the RPS, if this is too low, then it's going to send an on signal and spin up the motor. The gearboxes are going to be running on a default of 3:1 for the lead ones. And it's going to be a bit of trial and error to see how exactly this ratio is going to work out best. I'm going to have 3 3:1 gearboxes, which should be more than enough power to generate electricity for my electric motor setup. Bring these things up. Just to make things a little easier, I'm going to make this as deck plating. So I'm going to replace these pipes. And now I can set this level as the deck of the boat. Now, I don't have any hatches, any doors, or anything else, so I don't actually really get to work with a cabin or something like that. I'm going to have to go without that until we unlock those parts, and that's probably going to take quite a while, seeing my rate of income. Now, I generally like to make these things quite sleek and have a sort of an upstanding bow, I guess. Something like that. Something else that I've found quite handy on your starter boats is that sometimes they tend to tip over. You encounter a bit of rough weather, you encounter a hefty wave, something like that is going to screw up your boat. In that case, it is actually very easy to ride it again, provided that you have the right equipment. Come on. And the right equipment is usually just having a very simple solution. All that you need is one electric motor, or two, if you want to be a little bit more easy on getting your ship righted again. You're going to need 2 electric motors, and I usually build them into the sides here. So I'm going to have a prop, which is vertical, like that. So the boat's tipped upside down. That means that this is now sticking into the water. That's a bit of a problem, because that means that my boat cannot do anything. So I'm going to add 2 more electric motors. And these things are not exactly watertight, so you need to fix that. You can even put a block on top of it. That actually works. I haven't actually had a problem with that. And now I'm going to use something that I don't have, which is a numerical inverter. Without a numerical inverter, I'm just going to go with 1. It's not pretty because I like my boats to be symmetrical. But if this thing is upside down, I'm going to put pressure on the side of the boat using this electric engine, or electric motor, and it's going to flip itself right back up. That's the plan. Oh, there is something else that I still need to look into. And that is the way that this thing gets, where are you? Air. It still needs to get air. Now the bow of your boat is usually sticking out of the water. So I can easily add a couple of fluid ports over here. And that should allow my engines to immediately spin up again. Let's go with a couple of straight pipes here. There's the pipe. There's the port. And I just need to tie them together. There. Now my oxygen actually has, or my air actually has an oxygen port. Okay. I would really like to be able to get on board this boat. So we're going to have ladders on the sides. And I also need to start looking into how exactly I'm going to use my exhausts. Now, important thing with exhausts is they actually keep them pretty far above water level. If you don't, then you're going to find that your engine cannot get rid of its exhaust gases. And that is bad for your boat. Because without exhaust gases, your engine is going to just shut down. With all sorts of nasty results. Straight pipe. So that's the exhausts. Oh crap, that was too high. Here. And this goes over here. We do have the fluid exhaust. That's going to be the part where the engine gets rid of its exhaust gases. I have a sort of a double stern here. Okay, let's see if this thing floats. Whoa, it does. Now in the water, I'm even faster at freezing to death. Yep, it floats. It's not very far above the water level, but it does float. Alright, let's see how it actually performs. I'll have my control in the bow of the boat. And I want a sort of a... Let's see, I do have windows. Yeah, I do. A sort of a splash screen to make sure I don't take a lot of water. And this is just going to be for show. It doesn't actually do anything useful. Is that enough? That's not enough. Usually you just need to set up a sort of temporary barrier for these windows. And once they're actually up, you can then say, okay, I'm going to delete that part. And I can also use the corner windows. See, now I can delete these, but the game wouldn't actually let me deploy them while they were still there. I can close this off. Right, there. Just need 2 more windows. The narrow angled, no, the narrow angled ones. One there. One here. Now we have something that starts to actually resemble a boat. Now I will not be placing a bed on it. Reason for that being, if I have a bed on it, I'm just going to die in my sleep. Because I'm going to freeze. So that's not really something that is too good for my health. Seats. Again, I don't have a speed sensor. What I can make... Let's see, do I have that sensor yet? Yeah, I have it. Okay. I'm going to build another microcontroller. This one is going to start the engines when I'm on my seat. Now, the sort of input signal that the engine gets is an occupied signal. So if it's occupied, I want to start those engines. I can simply use this and tie it directly to that, but that's not really ideal, because if I do that, then I'm constantly going to be sending on signals to the engines, which is going to lead me into a point where I'm always sending an on signal that's going to drain the batteries. So, new microcontroller. It's going to have one number on-off input, which is my seat. And it's going to have one number output, which is going to be start engine. And let's make that a little smaller. Okay. I'm gonna again go with a less signal. Let's see. Here's what I'm gonna do. If I'm on my seat and the engine RPS is less than, let's say, 3, then I want you to send a start signal to the engine. Which means I'm also going to have one more input, which is going to be the RPS of the engine. Engine RPS. I'm going to need to make this thing one block wider. There. There's the engine RPS. If this is less than 3, I want you to send a starter signal. But it's only going to do this, send the engine signal, if the RPS is less than 3. That's how that works. Hold on, previously I did it with a PID. Let me check how I did that previous. Engine starter on player boarding ship. Ah, right. I was using a player sensor. If the player gets on board the ship, then I want the PID to start up. If the engine is less than that, I'm on board, and the RPS is less, then start the engine. I can just use this one. This is pretty easy. Okay. Player on board is engine start. I'm not going to go into this whole thing because I have it outlined on a different video, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, engine throttle. That's going to control the throttle on the main engines. So that's the diesels. Forgot to set up the other microcontroller. Then I want you to send the engine start signal. The RPS is going to also feed into this microcontroller. And the player sensor is basically, am I on my seat, yes or no? So that should automatically feed all the information into the engines. I don't need an engine throttle, I don't need anything like that, it's just going to automatically work. Now, my instrument panel over here. Can I not use this block? No, I guess not. Alright, I'm going to need a display that tells me how much power I have left in my batteries. I don't need any decimals. So this is battery status. I'm going to build a small microcontroller that adds up the battery power of all these 4 batteries and then divides it by 4. That way, I know how much power I have. So it's going to take 4 inputs, which are numbers. And then it's going to give me 1 output, which is also a number. So this is an input from a battery, a battery, a battery, and a battery. And this is going to tell me to battery status display. And currently it doesn't quite fit. Let's make it 1 wide, 5 long. There. Okay. It takes 4 inputs from batteries and 1 output. I cannot just simply tie all these 4 here. I need to add them up. I need to do that with a function. I can either use the triple, the single, or one that uses 8 inputs. This is the one I'm going to use. I want X, Y, Z, and W. Now it's going to give me a signal that says 4, which is alright, but it's not quite what I want to know. Because I want to divide this. So that's X divided by 4. Which means whatever comes out of this formula goes in there. And then I want you to do that times 100, and that's going to give me percentage. This is simply X plus Y plus Z plus W. And this is going to go out there. Battery status for batteries. Battery status for bats. Okay, this should allow me to quickly add up all the batteries. That's 1 battery, and it doesn't matter which one you connect where. 1, 2, 3, 4, and this one goes to the battery indicators panel. Okay. So now I can see what sort of power I have. Now it's time to set the W and S to go to those motors, so I can use W and S to maneuver. I'm going to press 1 if I want to speed up, and that's going to turn the gearbox from a 1 to 1 to a 1 to 2. Let's say speed up. It's a toggle button, so that works. This is throttle. And something I haven't quite installed on this boat yet is a rudder, which is rather handy if you're building a boat. And that goes to A and delta. So that controls the rudder. Now all that is left to do is just connect everything together. Now I know some people like to start from the batteries. I generally don't do that because it becomes a just spaghetti soup of wires. I don't want that. I want this to be fairly organized. And this one can tie into that and here as a reserve. Alright. I think that should do it. Let's spawn it in and see if it goes. Ow. Alright, it moves. Yep, there's my engine. You can see there's smoke coming out of the exhausts. The main power is consistently at 100. Now I'm going to hit the speed up. Again, I really don't know how fast we're going, unfortunately, because we don't have a speed indicator. But at least we have a workable boat. It turns alright. It sits still at 100 power. Oh, one thing I don't have is an indicator that tells me exactly how much fuel I have left. Let's add that and then wrap it up. And I am still freezing over. Okay, so this is pretty much the same thing. Actually, I can use the exact same thing for the battery. Because I'm again adding 4 numbers together. So I can just put that thing over there. Add up all the fuel tanks. So that's tank 1, tank 2, tank 3, and tank 4. And I want a couple of dials to make sure I can see what my engines are doing. Engine, fuel. So this is fuel. It's 4 times 180. Alright, so that's 750 points of fuel between those 4 fuel tanks. This is going to be my RPS right from 1 to 20, and this is going to be my RPS left 0 to 20. Make sure that those things actually take information from the RPS sensors and that they have power. Okay, it's going to be the last trial of this boat for this episode. Oh, it's already starting the engine. We have 18,000 points of fuel. Oh, right, because the microcontroller is throwing a bit of a wrench in the works. I don't need to divide this by 4. Not for my fuel. So I can just use that. Otherwise it just doesn't work. It starts to divide it, it starts to add it, it starts to multiply it by 100. For batteries, that's exactly what I want. For my fuel, not so much. There we go. Yep, we're going. Fuel is very slowly going down. We're fine. Okay, we have a working boat. We have an Arctic scenario. We just need people to rescue. But that's going to happen in the next episode. For now, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think of the boat. And I'll see you soon for more episodes.